Okay.
Self-imposed, it's not recorded. Okay, this is a comprehensive plan review committee, Route 1 Corridor Public Workshop. For the sake of completeness, if the members of the comprehensive plan committee would identify themselves.
Dr. Finley, Chair. Dorothy Gregor. Simone Guasino.
Dan Du Bois.
So make me Sean Hayes.
Diane Robbins.
Philip Prince. John Bell.
Kitty Vanessa.
Okay. So this is a workshop, it'll be very informal. We'll just like to make sure that everybody, if they want to be recognized, either Donna or myself, identify yourself. Tad, you want to start out?
Yes. The first thing I would like to ask is has everybody signed in here? The reason why I ask that is it's very important for us to have you signed in so we know who came. And also, if you'd like to leave your email address, that would be great, because what that would do is that we'll be able to, if you'd like, we'll notify you of any changes or any events that are occurring in this whole zoning process. In case you want to be, obviously, is keep tabs on what the planning and the comprehensive planning committee are doing in order to make input and to track some of the concepts that they're doing. What we're doing here is we're having a workshop with our residents to examine and to get their input on some significant changes we're looking at doing to the zoning ordinance. The planning board has been working with and has given it to the comp plan review committee in order for them to review it, to make amendments to the comprehensive plan accordingly. And one of the things that we're looking at doing right now, the planning board has been working on, is creating a new district, or two sets of districts along the Route 1 corridor and surrounding roads. Those districts that they've been working on, and some folks have been participating in some of those planning board meetings, workshops, and public hearings. Well, we haven't had public hearings, but we have workshops of them. Those two districts are currently called the Downtown Business District 1 and the Downtown Business District 2. And what the concept of the Downtown Business District is to try to concentrate more business and industrial business and commercial activity into the southern part of the Route 1 corridor. The reason you may ask is why. We have a large, this map here, this orange section here called the CCS is the way it's currently zoned. That's the current zone for business on the east side, from Old Post Road up to about 1,000 feet from the road, from Route 1, is the R2 district. On the other side is primarily the R1 district, which is residential 1 acre zoning. This is 2 acre zoning. And then along the river, we have the R4 district, which is a 3 acre zoning. That's actually rural conservation. So we've had this strip for a long time. And one of the things the planning board did is they also noted that since 2007, we've had this large business area that you folks know is northern Route 1. It's called the BI District, Business Industrial Office Park area. And it's a very large area. It goes from the pipeline or the Eastern Trail to the west, all the way to 1,000 feet from the east of Route 1 corridor. It goes all the way to the Biddeford line. This area was designated originally in 2007 to be a concentrated business industrial zone. The problem with it is that there are some serious site constraints, as probably most of you know about that area. It is ledge on the west side and wetlands on the east side, and we've had some difficulty getting projects to launch in that particular area because of site constraints. In fact, the site constraints have been so great that they've actually killed prospective projects in that area when they start looking at costs. In fact, we have the seasonal cottage project that was given a roadblock because their actual value engineering determined the costs were much more than they had initially anticipated when they got their approvals. So we have a huge area here that has some significant, very significant site constraints. And it shows, because we're not getting much development. That was where the development was supposed to occur in the last, since 2007, there's very little that has occurred in that particular area. What we see down here, though, is what's happened is the planning board was looking at two things. Number one, they were looking at trying to create a more concentrated business zone, and also recognizing there was a lot of land that was basically undeveloped in that particular area. And the land is actually more conducive to development than the land in this area. So the planning board looked at the prospect of pursuing what the comp plan committee had done in 2007 and what the town had voted on, which is they wanted to create this a commercial district and a village scale commercial activities were limited to 15,000 square feet. The planning board said that's a good idea, let's continue with that concept, but let's expand it a little bit more. But in order to meet those standards that were set in that comp plan, let's do that, but then also let's look at the land that's behind it that's basically undeveloped at this particular time. And expand that district, create a new district that would allow for a little more intensive business and institutional and commercial uses in those particular areas, and give the town an opportunity to expand its non-residential tax base. And do it in a controlled fashion that would meet the general standards of making this sort of a village area, or at least a concentrated area down here, and provide the infrastructure necessary to support it. Still maintain this, but expand it. So we basically had more village along the road, and then more intensive uses behind it. So the planning board developed some concepts on this and some regulations and went through it, and the comprehensive plan committee agreed with the concept that it was continuation of what they had done in 2007, but they were concerned that because this was an expansion into property that is currently zoned either residential 2 or residential 1 or even R4, that we should contact all of the property owners, that being you, to get your input on some of the ideas that we have in this particular district. And if you have concerns, if you like the ideas, if you don't like the ideas, this is an opportunity to express it. I understand a lot of you haven't really had a chance to look at any of the documents that we've produced thus far, and so we brought some. And we also have some maps to show to you as well. This, unlike the current zoning, which goes by distance from a known point, which in this case would be the road, 1,000 feet from the road. One of the things that both boards decided that would be a better way of doing things would be, as much as possible, to follow property lines instead of distances. And so what we have here is a delineation of the proposed district by the planning board, based on the concept that has been approved by the comprehensive plan committee, in which the red area that you see here is the DB1 district, and the green area behind is the DB2 districts. And these are the two districts, and you can see it's rather ragged and so forth, but the intent is to follow property lines wherever possible. Because we have found at the planning board level and at the code enforcement level that splitting properties is not very conducive to very effective development, and actually, in some cases, can render the property useless. However, those who are here, who are property owners, we've got some of your names up here. I know this isn't a great place to come and look. I also have handouts to show you what area, whatever area you're in, what the proposed boundaries would be at this point. We also have documents here that show that have the actual proposed regulations that the planning board is looking at and that the comp plan committee has looked at on the types of uses that would be allowed in both districts. So that's essentially an overview of what we're looking at doing. What we would really like to know now is what the reaction is, because these areas have long been zoned residential, as we said. They're there has been a lot of activity on most of these large parcels. And we think this opens up new opportunities for development of your property. And if you don't like the idea of developing your property, this is the time to bring it forward your concerns. I don't know, Andrew, did you hear about any of the?
Some of the people took it, but some people came in after. They are right up before the DD.
Okay, if anybody would like any of those are here as well. That's my initial presentation. Madam Chairman of the Complaint Committee, anything you would like to add?
Not at this moment.
No?
I think, I'd like to hear questions from the folks who came to talk about this.
One thing, perhaps you should explain what this abstract art is over here.
Yeah, I debated whether or not to bring that.
It's there.
It's there. Yeah, one of the problems always in large parcels and in development is thinking about how large parcels that are in many cases landlocked or only have their access from Old Post Road here. How's that gonna work with a with a district that's really focused on Route 1 or focused on Limerick Road or focused up basically in this area here or on campground or log cabin? How's a big piece of property out here relate? And one of the things the planning board really looked at was the issue of trying to encourage connectivity between parcels as they're developed. And so what we've examined is possible routes, not mandated routes, but possible routes of putting roads in that would connect various parcels and encouraging property owners who want to develop parcels back here to establish roads or driveways that connect the parcels together and then make them more of a usable parcel rather than having to try to get access directly for every single parcel out on Route 1 or out on Limerick Road. And so what we did was we experimented with several possible ways that we could encourage various property owners to work together to build combined driveways or combined roadways that would open up and increase the amount of area of their property that could be developed. And so these are several of the scenarios that we put together and made recommendations. There's another one in the car that I just didn't bring in. It shows one large one going up through here and another one coming in Strickland Drive up here and then out, either at Sam's Road or all the way up through the Hopkins property up to Campground. That's what this is. This is basically some playing around with where roads could go and how they could work to help facilitate future development of those properties. And something that the planning board really wants to push, and I know the comp plan wants to push too, because first of all, it increases your development potential. Second of all, it also limits the number of curb cuts on Route 1. And quite frankly, folks, DOT is really starting to clamp down on curb cuts. They have a policy of trying to limit as many curb cuts as possible, and especially with multiple developments in the future, they're going to want to see combined driveway accesses where they can. So that was one of the reasons we also looked at this, is to help facilitate any developer or any property owner who wanted to develop their property, that they wouldn't run afoul of DOT, and they work together to create combined curb cuts. We've also found this to be the case out on Route 111. So that's what this is here. So that's the abstract art. The blobs are wetlands, identified wetlands that we have. So at this particular time, I know that some of you must have some questions. I see some questioning faces out here, and what I would encourage you to do is to come on up, stand up, tell us your name, and ask the question.
My name's Jim Searles. I got about 28 acres in this fiasco you guys created. I have no intention of going commercial if I have to deed restrict it forever and ever. I'll give it to Rachel Carson, one of them. How do you just gonna go forward this if the landowners object to being caught in this commercial zone, or how's it go? My land runs from Hissons to Cyril Plain. You know, and I've been there 63 years. If I wanted to develop it, I would have done so before.
This is your land here, isn't it, sir?
But,
That's Cyril's lane that goes in through
you
here?
know, I don't own Cyril's Lane anymore. I've given 16 acres to my daughter and son-in-law. But I abut their land after it comes off Route 1 about 350, maybe 400 feet. I cut back over to abut their land, and Hisson is on the right-hand side if you're looking in from Route 1.
Okay, this would be your land right here, because
Yeah.
there's his zone right here.
Yeah.
Is that even in the area that we wanted to change?
Yeah, it
Looks
looks
like
like
a little bit of his frontage.
Well, the frontage is, and the frontage is right now, and actually it's reduced because right now, actually your area is in that same zone. There's nothing that, actually, you're not gonna have any change. If anything, you're gonna have a smaller zone than you have right now. Because right now, the front of your property is currently zoned in the CCS district right here,
1,000 feet back, correct?
1,000 feet back. This is gonna be 350. So it's gonna be considerably less than which, so for you, it's less of an impact on your property. So this is gonna be a lessening of zoning on your particular property.
I'm concerned about the taxes. When you do all this, how's the taxes going to affect us?
Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. Let's get that out of the way right up front. What happens in taxing, and I've had a long talk with the assessor about this. What happens with the tax situation? When you zone a piece of land, a certain, let's say you change it to a higher taxable level, like from residential to commercial, or even low-density residential to high-density residential, it's gonna stay pretty much the same taxation until you actually do the activity. The only thing that would change that would be is, let's say you're the only property out here, and everything around you were to develop, and then we do a revaluation, then they're going to look at your property and say, well, it's within that district, that whole district has gone crazy, and it's all increased, and therefore, then the taxation may occur. But right now, we're running at 100% valuation, and I don't think the town's in any position or any concern to do revaluation anytime soon. So unless you got flanked by, say, Goodall, or what is it now, it's called Southern Maine Medical Center. Southern Maine Medical Center decides they want to build a campus out here, just like they did with Maine Medical Center, or they're doing with Mercy. And they wanted you to build one over here, or out here, and you have another project, Hisson decides he's gonna do a project on the other side. That's about the only situation, and we do a revaluation, that's about the only situation where that property would be increased in valuation. Otherwise, until it changes, until the use changes, the assessor really doesn't have a basis in which to.
It's well examined, there's no guarantees. It's just what you just said. I have property out in front of mine a little bit that's going commercial. Hisson's on my right,
Yep.
I'm sitting in the middle. I have 3 residential houses there, and enough land for my grandchildren behind me. And you're gonna tax us right out of existence, whether I want it or not.
I don't believe I said that.
No, you can't tax for potential.
Right.
You can only tax for what it's being used for. So what he's saying is, unless you decide to start a business on your property, you're gonna get taxed just residential like you are now. Just because the people around you are commercial, you can't, it's like somebody that has property along the Kennebunk River, and it's taxed at a certain rate along the river, but until somebody sells it for a marina, it's a house, and you can't tax it for the possibility that it might be a marina. You can only tax it for a house.
All right, I understand that, but if we have commercial residential, which you say I am now,
You're commercial right now. Up 1,000 feet into your property, you're commercial.
why do we need to change this and go through all this? If the people that's in the zone that's cold place, residential, commercial, am I correct? Is what I have considered?
Well, you're considered commercial up front for the first 1,000 feet, and then you're going to be, you are R2, you're resident, actually you're R3, you're three acre zoning after that.
He's staying where he is.
You're pretty much staying where you're at, where you are. In fact, you're actually getting less, you're getting more residential property this way. You're getting more R3 property.
I don't see the need to change and go through. I don't think my son-in-law is gonna give up his land there.
Okay.
If I could add a comment, the intent of this was, you know, how can we reduce taxes to residences, right? There's a whole opportunity on Route 1 to bring in some more, possible opportunity to bring in some more commercial. And if we could bring in more commercial, that would hopefully help all of our taxes go down. So this is really the intent on how can we market that area to make it better for commercial. And we don't want to bring in a Walmart, we don't want to bring in, you know, big box store, but how can we market the area to put a little bit more commercial businesses in there so it can help all of us with our taxes.
And the intent, I'll speak for myself, the intent was not, and that's one of the reasons why we kind of requested this, was we wanted to ensure that, I guess we're all pretty sympathetic, we all live here. So it's not like I live next door and I'm coming in and I just sit on the board. We all live in the same town. One of the things we wanted to do was we wanted to talk to the people that own this property to ensure that we were not doing something that was going to cause someone grief or that someone didn't want. And some of us feel the same way about our own property, so you're not alone. So that was why we wanted you to come in, and I'm glad you stood up and spoke, because it's important. It's your land, you've bought it, you've paid for it, and you live on it. For you, it doesn't look like it would change very much. You don't like the commercial, which is in front of you right now. It looks like that would be decreased. So right now you have 1,000 feet in front of you, now you only have like, was it 350 in front of you. So for you, I don't think that it's going to be much change. I think tell me if I'm wrong, Ted, but the biggest change appears to be the ones that are in the green.
Yes. Green's the biggest change. I mean, in some ways, the red has been reduced and the green has been increased. The red would go out 1,000 feet, for instance, and that is a lesser intense district than the green is. The green is a greater intense district.
And in the future, because we all know that, as you said, things can change. We can't arbitrarily go in and change your lot and add it without it going through this whole process. So if it ever were to be that someone decided that they wanted to increase the green and say go all the way up, you would have to know about it, it would have to go through both these committees again, and it has to go through town meeting. It's not something like in a town where they have council people where they just make a decision and that's how it gets done and you don't get a lot of say. Because we still have town meeting, even if someone wanted to change your property, it still has to go through the committees and it still has to go through town meeting, and your voice does matter.
I feel now like you've already done everything you said that it wouldn't happen. You know, that Route 1 is commercial, and if people want to give their land up and build, all the more power to them. But now you're taking and moving that zone back on the campground road and all that, you know. If you want to make Route 1 commercial, I'll never see it in my lifetime, you need sewer.
Let me respond in part here. This is by no means a done deal. This process began with the planning board, as Pat explained, looking at possible ways to increase commercial development in town in a place where there was already commercial development allowed, thus increasing the commercial tax base, reducing the residential taxes. So that was a reason behind it. The plan, and I'll explain at this point that this process has been done backwards, not for any nefarious reason, it's just the way it evolved. The planning board put together a proposal with regards to DB1 and DB2, and then they came to the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee and said, would you look at this and tell us what you think? We spent several meetings discussing this, and one of the things that was a hot and heavy issue was private property rights. We said, what if there was someone, and this would apply to someone perhaps in the green area, who has 20 acres of land, they have nothing on it at the moment, they had designated that in their own minds as a place to build a retirement home. Now all of a sudden it's commercial. And we're going to tell them they can't, and none of us particularly could go for that, because that's not right. So one of the things that's built into the proposed language, and I emphasize proposed, because this is not a done deal, for the DB2 district, the green area, owners of existing lots of record shall have the right to build one single-family dwelling, but family lot divisions will be excluded. So in effect, if you were that person with the 20 acres and you wanted to build a retirement home, you could still do that without having to have any business attached to it. So the attempt is being made to look out for the property rights of the people who currently own the land. As Diane alluded to, the reason for this meeting, and I wish there were 4 times as many landowners here as have shown up tonight, is to hear what you have to say. Because if the landowners in those green, in DB2 in the green area, are in general agreement that this is not the appropriate use of their land, then this process has to change. The outcome will change. Something will have to be reworked, it will have to be rethought. Because there's no point in taking a neighborhood of people and destroying what they have in mind because we think we have a better idea. We're part of the town too. So this is not done. This is, the planning board came up with an idea, the comprehensive plan committee wrote some language to reflect that. It needs to be discussed, it needs to be agreed upon, and then it needs to go to town meeting. So what we're looking for is something which is agreeable to everyone if possible. The other thing I think I can clarify, because I think there was a little misunderstanding with regard to the taxes. What Simone explained is my understanding as well. You can't tax on potential. So you can't look at a piece of land and say, wow, that could be a site for a hotel, let's jack up the taxes, even though there's a farmhouse sitting on it at the moment. But I think part of what Tad explained is sometime down the road, there's commercial development all around you, and you're the only piece left. Then if revaluation occurred, and stop me if I'm doing this wrong, Tad, if revaluation occurred, then your property would be valued at a higher level than it is today because the surrounding land has so much more value. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. So could that happen at some point, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, or if we're looking at fully developing this, maybe 50 years down the road? Yes. Is it likely in the immediate future? No. But again, as a landowner myself in town, would I worry about it? You bet.
And someone like me that has children that plans to pass this land on to my children, I should have to worry about that. They're probably going to have to worry about it because I'm only 34 years old. In 34 years, I've seen the same situation happen that commercial just keeps coming in, and keeps sucking up more and more land. And you're gonna take up what's now a resident zone and deem it commercial. And if a person that bought their land, 20 acres, whatever it may be, doesn't want to sell it and had no intention when they bought it to sell it for whatever reason, to pass it on to their kids or to live and die there. If they don't want to sell, that's their right, but they're going to have to deal with commercial businesses all around them, like Bentley's or a loud industry or something like that. Is that what I'm getting? That's about the gist of it.
That's a realistic possibility, in my opinion.
See, if we don't do this and we don't attract commercial in the town of Arundel, then the property taxpayers are bearing the burden of our schools, our municipalities, the infrastructure. And that's what we don't want to happen. Because if you think you've got a problem, seniors that live here that are on fixed income, if their property taxes keep going up, they've got to move out.
Oh, I know.
So the whole gist of this exercise, that's what it was, as an exercise, to see what we can do to generate more tax revenue without affecting everybody.
Try to strike a balance.
What's that?
Try to strike a balance.
Try to strike a balance so we can keep our taxes low. I mean, if somebody's been living here for 30 years, you know what the taxes have gone in 30 years, what are they gonna be like 30 years from now? So the whole objective is trying to attract commercial businesses to help us bear the burden of our tax base.
Have you guys looked into what the traffic's gonna be like, if the, you know, proposed traffic situation? Because I have to cross Route 1, I have to pull out into Route 1. It's already crazy as it is. You start putting commercial businesses in everywhere, that's gonna, you know, jack up the traffic.
Part of the review process from the board, when a new project goes in,
Good.
it's major, there's traffic impact studies that are done, and
Right.
sometimes we have to have them put in like signaling, heading, etc. So that happens as you build. I mean, you can't project for 3,000 big businesses right now, but you get one big business, and then you have them do the study at their cost, and then we look at how to make it better.
And honestly, we had looked at the red section, the DB1, as consisting primarily of smaller businesses. And if you put enough small businesses and they draw people to them, traffic will slow down in that area. And we had looked at that and said that would be a good thing because it would slow the traffic down. In the back section in the DB2, we were looking more from a support services kind of situation where the businesses themselves might be larger, but they would tend to be supporting the businesses in the front more than they would be some kind of a loud manufacturing situation. You might end up with some manufacturing back there, but nothing that we had looked at from an ordinance point of view would have been major manufacturing. That it would all have been light manufacturing, maybe some guy making, doing a furniture situation.
How many people does this affect, this new zoning? How many properties?
Who was it, 7 or 8 in the green?
No, So how much did you send out? How many letters?
I sent out 34 letters.
Okay.
Yeah, it may have come by me, I never noticed it.
Well, I don't know that you would have gotten
You're
one
not in that
because-
zone, so I don't
Because
think
you're not
you
in
would have
that
gotten
zone.
Well, I'm on Route 1 there, you know, in the
Yeah, but
new
you're not
zone,
in the area.
proposed zone.
Actually, if what he's pointing to is the zone that they're talking about are the ones that are in green. The ones in green are the pieces of property that they were proposing to change the zoning on. So you appear to be a little bit further up, which means that your property was not one that they had.
That's your property right
understand.
there.
But if this thing goes as well as you people predicted and you develop this, you're gonna be looking at the rest of my property down Hisson Lane. I have a right of way all the way down his, which he run into the problem, he couldn't build a building unless I took my driveway out of Route 1 and he put the road in and I put my driveway off his road, which I agreed to let him have his business in back there. But as time goes on, if this goes, you're gonna keep taking more and more if industry comes and the demand is there for more property. And that's what I'm worried about. As far as, I'm in my declining years, no doubt about it, but I have grandchildren I have the hopes could use the back.
That's why I say that we're fortunate that we have this process where you can come in and you can voice your opinions, your children would be able to come in, and they wouldn't be able to change your property without you knowing.
But what I'm scared of is if you're gonna, say I got 14 acres left back there, I can't divide it up into equal lots for the kids. You know, if it goes into the green commercial.
Yes.
You're residential,
You still can do
you're
that, yeah.
residential now, you
I know, my back lot is
I'm looking at the
residential.
future, because if this thing goes as you projected, you start,
well, we're not predicting.
We're not all in this
We're hoping just to have some opportunity for some growth.
I've been here, like I said, for 63 years. I work with the next town over, which is no problem with money. And I see this working its way. The working man is no longer gonna live in York County, he's gonna have to live in Aroostook County.
So you won't be living anywhere, where's the code?
When I first come to this town, I remember when zoning come, we're gonna have one ordinance. Now you people got books. You got a truckload almost, all off.
I think
But
we see
we're
that in
not alone.
every city, every city,
That's right.
you know. It's
We're
like-
not alone, and the ordinances have been put in place to kind of corral a little bit, because
With the paragraph, I think, though, that Donna read, the protection, if you have a piece of property, I'm going to kind of speak for everybody, because we've all kind of agreed that that's the kind of protection we want for the residences. If you were to split your land for your kids, you'd always have, they would always have that right to do it.
Yeah, we need to clarify something. That paragraph that I read, or that section of the paragraph I read, only applies to the green area. That would not apply to you,
No,
because
that's right.
No,
I agree, but I'm saying in the future, if this green area takes off, you're gonna be looking at my back property to go green. You know?
I mean,
can't say that they won't, no.
Can I say something? I just want you to know that it's not a done deal, and it's not all of us that are moving this in the same direction, because I might be the only one to feel this way, but I've always been concerned with property owners like you. I've raised that as a concern at our meetings, like, what about what the needs are of the property owners? I'd rather, if it's a balance between higher taxes and impacting a property owner, I'm gonna lean towards protecting your rights. It might cost us all a 1% rise in taxes, but I don't think it's fair for our taxes to go down on the backs of a few property owners like you that would have a negative impact. I don't feel that's right. That's one thing. There's also, I've heard forever that the most important thing that we want to protect in this town is the rural character. And here's an example where that's what you want to protect, is your rural character. It's your acreage, that's your home. And we're looking at, wow, we can triple the amount of commercial space in one swoop. And I've always been a little uneasy with that. I'd rather do it a little bit less. So I might be going against the message here, but I just have to get it out in this forum. You're the only one speaking so far, and I don't know what other property owners, how they feel, but I think if we get the message that not everybody's on board, I think as a committee, we need to be very careful what we're doing to the property owners and what their rights are. So I just want to let you know, you're not all alone on this. I understand what you're saying 100%. If it was my property, I would say the exact same thing that you're saying.
And
Can I say something? Just taking a step back, I think if you look at the first ever land use ordinance we had in Arundel, there's 2-acre lots all over town. That was it. Everybody was 2-acre lots. But then you get into the point where, you know, like, we were intruding on some people's rights as well. If they had a 1-acre lot, they were non-conforming now. If I had, you know, if I have 10 acres, you know, so, and then we went to this, like, all the different R1s, R2s, R3, R4. We impacted people then too. But, you know, you had to kind of make a choice of where you're going to keep your rural character and where is business already starting. And no matter what, and I understand everybody's rights, and I don't want to step on anybody's rights either and stuff, but unfortunately, zoning has to be there to protect your rights. Otherwise, you know, like, you know, the whole good neighbor standard type things is, you know, who do you want building next to? Do you want a junkyard next to you? Do you want it unregulated so that nothing is regulated? So, and in the old days, 2-acre lots all over town and everything was allowed and everything was unregulated. And there were a lot of issues with a lot of things being built next to residential areas that weren't appropriate. So, you know, I know zoning's a two-edged sword. It's got some good points and bad points, and, you know, we have to kind of weigh that all together. Yeah.
The other thing, if I, just before you finish, if I may, I want to emphasize again, this is a proposal. And that's exactly where we are right now. It still has ahead of it a good deal of input from a lot of people and a good deal of discussion and then a vote at town meeting. So what input we get this evening, whatever it may be, is going to go back to these two committees and will be discussed and evaluated, and if there are adjustments that can be made that seem to solve some of the issues brought up tonight, those adjustments will be made in the next version of the proposal. So don't feel as though, you know, we decided all of this and then said, come in so we can tell you what we've just done. That's not it at all. It's exactly the opposite.
My thought is, you got the horse before the cart. You got the zone that exists now. If you had sewer, you could build more on smaller lots. You know, half this land that you're looking at is non-buildable, you're not gonna have sewer problems. I think before you wanna develop Route 1, you start at Bartlett's, the bridge crossing there, and figure something out for sewerage and come up through. You know, and I think there's a lot of land that people would be more than glad to sell and put on. But I don't see, by expanding these zones, it's a dream. You ain't gonna be able to get the facilities in there that's gonna make them usable.
You have a comment?
Infrastructure is
I have a
always.
question.
Yes, go ahead.
I've read the information here. I'm still not clear on what the practical difference is between the DB1 and DB2.
In terms of what is the functional difference between the two?
Yeah.
Yeah, the DB1 is actually a smaller scale, smaller business zone along the road. DB2 is back of the building, larger, more intensive uses. If you look at if you compare some of the land uses, same uses that are allowed in DB1 are also allowed in DB2, but DB2 has other uses that you can do. DB2's got a maximum building footprint of 100,000 square feet. DB1's got a maximum building footprint of 20,000 square feet. The objective is to make along the road the village, small commercial, community scale kind of retail that the town decided it wanted in this section of Route 1 back in 2005 and 2007 when you made your amendments to your comp plan. That was your goal. That's what the town said. This is what we want. This reflects the character of our community, and this reflects the direction we want the community to look like in the future. To have more of the kind of smaller scale businesses and service operations that meet the community needs and needs of tourists and other people on Route 1. And it was limited to that 15,000. We're looking at preserving that same concept that the town voted on and decided they wanted to go that way, but providing for a greater breadth of opportunity behind it. And increase the number of uses, increase the potential for combining lots, and having larger projects that can be done on larger lots. The question of soil suitability is always a big question. But areas with larger parcels in which you can find a community septic field location in amongst parcels is one of the advantages to increasing the zone and extending into the larger lots. In fact, the Kennebunk, renamed the Arundel Seasonal Cottage Community is up on ledge, and they found a piece of land that they were able to put a community septic field in because they assembled a large tract of land, so they can put their 259 residences on there, and they have a community septic field. That's one of the advantages to the larger lots, is that you can overcome some of your site constraints if you have adequate land in which to do it.
Follow it up on the sewer question.
Sure.
Is there any sanitary sewer in the town of Arundel?
No.
Are there plans? Yes. Are there, the comp plan committee has said back in 2007, I believe this comp plan committee is also recommending that there be infrastructure, sewer infrastructure pursued for this corridor. Right now, the minimum lot size is 1 acre. Tough to build on 1 acre, but that is our current minimum lot size, with 70% impervious surface. Certainly having sewer, I would agree, would increase that potential. Is there capacity in Kennebunk? There is, but that's something that we've been talking with them. And, but of course, that's a huge cost to incur, to extend sewer. Very huge cost, and the selectmen are looking at some options.
Distance-wise, what are you talking about from the Kennebunk line up to, not sure what the...
Log Cabin Road.
Log Cabin.
Well, just past Log
Yeah,
Cabin.
in past Log Cabin.
Okay, what is that, 2 miles, 3 miles?
It's about a mile and a third, and maybe a mile and a half. Oh, yeah, it's getting close to it, all the way to the top where the red is. We've already done preliminary cost estimates on that. It's coming out about $2 million for sewer right now without a pump station.
Not bad, really, if you think about multiple businesses.
That's
putting
assuming,
cost, yeah.
of course, that's assuming we don't have to make upgrades to Kennewick, which I would assume we have to participate in. So I mean, these are things that we're not addressing. We're not pipe dreaming this. We're looking at this seriously and also looking at ways that can be financed. This isn't just a pipe dream from the standpoint of just taking a shotgun approach to trying to solve economic development issues in the town. We've got a combined program we're putting together. But the zoning is, in order to do the sewer, we also need to make sure we have the zoning ready to go as well. It makes no sense to install sewer and not be set up to go. So.
My name is Jan Tewksbury-Bowes, my father had some money that was in the state account. And I wonder, I can't see your map on the ones. I know it was lot 35. Is that included in the Green area? You said name and
Oh, not all of them.
it's up in there.
This is probably the one I didn't put on the map. Of course.
I tried to sort of look at mine.
35. Who do you know who you're next to?
It's at the end of Walker Lane,
Yeah.
beyond that residential is.
Yeah, you've got residential there, you have a native property right here, and I've got Rita Drew's property. Is yours on the other side of that?
I don't know.
It looks like it's right on the very edge, the left-hand side, just above that line.
Come on up here and show me. I've got an aerial here too, but that's the very reason.
I did get a letter, so.
Yes.
I mean, you-
That's you. No, that's you right there. Why, you want to be in the district?
So it is outside the.
It's outside the district. I probably sent that to you because it was a butter property. It was also a question if that's one of the properties that, there are those who might want to be in these districts. And your property really is landlocked right now. And certainly, that would be a property that would, in addition to these, they would want to assemble.
And this all stays residential.
We're looking at actually turning this into residential, because not all of it, right now, a lot of this is still in the commercial district. It's all residential now.
And where the access,
Well, that's obviously would be a real issue to the Walker Lane Park. And I expected to get an outpouring, but I don't think we really notified Walker Lane. We don't have to, but we wanted to get input from the property owners here, whether or not they would go along with that. But that's your property right there. I sent it to you, that's $2 million or so.
access plans.
One of the access plans is, of course, looking at using existing right-of-ways through here in order to then branch off. Like, here's your property here. Obviously, these are concepts. You know, the concept might be, let's say these two were to assemble, or a section of this one, a section of this one to assemble. Obviously, the road would change, but the objective is to show that if we do put in these roads, when property owners agree and put in roads between parcels, the development potential increases significantly. It's just to fuel ideas, fuel imagination. I've got a landlocked parcel, whether it be here or whether it be over here, and there's ways that my property actually can yield a result. Thank you. Certainly, thank you.
Yes.
Lady back there.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sitting behind the wrong person here. I'm Pamela Drew. My property on Limerick Road is not in this area. However, my mother received a notice for this workshop. She has two properties. I think they're both in there. You just mentioned her dad over by Walker's Lane. You just mentioned her.
Yeah, there's one.
That's one. The other one's behind Weir's.
Yeah, it's behind the Mator property right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
under
they're both-
Rita Drew.
Pardon me?
It's under Rita Drew?
Yes.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right,
you've
so
got
they're
one
both
there
in
and one
there.
there.
All right, they're both in there. So what you're saying is, in the green area, you're proposing to expand the commercial uses.
Right.
Okay, but Donna, can you reread that paragraph? So what's the deal with residential?
Okay, this time I'll read the entire paragraph, as opposed to just the
And
caveat
that's not
at
on the
the end.
handout, is that correct?
That's correct.
I looked for it.
Okay, I'll do the whole spiel here. And understand that the comprehensive plan is simply a very broad statement and set of guidelines that, once it's approved at town meeting, the planning board then takes, and this is the normal sequence of events, and writes an ordinance from this. So this is the topic heading, and then they do details. And I referred before to the fact we did this backwards. They did the details, and then we said, oh, what does this mean in general terms? Okay, DB2. The designation applies to the areas behind the DB1 district and is intended as a mixed-use district, which will encourage more intensive commercial and institutional uses than DB1. The DB2 district will permit small, medium, and large, up to 100,000 square feet, scale wholesale, retail, office, and service uses, as well as community uses and low-impact manufacturing. Residential uses, both single and multifamily, that are part of a mixed-use project will be permitted. In addition, single-family dwellings will be permitted, but new single-family subdivisions will be excluded. Owners of existing lots of record shall have the right to build one single-family dwelling, but family lot divisions will be excluded. Development standards for this district will complement the building patterns in DB1, but will allow for the more intensive commercial and institutional uses, making maximum use of the available land as site conditions permit and as improved infrastructure is provided. And that allows for the sewer down the road if that should happen.
So you're saying on that 45 acres behind Weir's, new resi subdivisions are excluded?
Yes.
But one house
You could put in one house,
on the
yes.
45 acres?
Yes. Well, the intent here,
I like lots of room, so that's very nice.
that's good? Okay. The intent here was to
Not too economic, but.
push that land toward commercial use. So that you know, if someone, again, if you have the 45 acres and you wanted to have a business, you can have your business there and your home at the same time. That's what the mixed use definition refers to. We were trying to discourage having the land cut up into a bunch of little house lots, because the idea is to have that as an area for commercial development.
Possible.
Well,
That's where the incentive would be
Yes.
for it to be commercial development.
yeah, assuming we can attract the businesses to
Right.
go there, absolutely.
Right, it's just,
Did that answer your question?
I think so. Thank you.
And one thing, if I may, the land off of Old Post Road, not the whole land is zoned, only a piece of it is. Your whole land goes all the way here.
Yeah.
It's landlocked right now, I don't know if you have a lot.
There's right of ways in.
There's right of ways there.
Yeah.
Okay, it's taken this portion right here,
All right.
not the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
And that's one of the things we wanna, we wanna hear from the landowners, and there's some landowners who say, take the whole thing, and there's others who say, we don't take any. So, that's another thing that you're gonna help us also figure out with the line share.
Theoretically, if Pam wanted, that little piece that's in the green of her acreage could be carved out. Theoretically.
Theoretically,
Yeah,
absolutely.
subdivided.
It could theoretically be carved out, if you wanted to go all the way to here,
Or the other
Or the
piece
other
could be,
direction.
right, the other piece could be added.
Or she could take both of them. You're saying in this zone proposal, you could carve them out. Is that what you're saying?
no, it would, the lines aren't set in concrete, in other words. You know, the reason why we're having this meeting is to get landowner input on this whole thing. I was gonna say impact. I kept trying to change that. Look, zoning ordinances are really a contract between all the residents of the town. You make a decision what direction you want to go in. We all agree that we're going to try to achieve certain things, and we're going to zone areas in town in order to achieve that. If people in this area just do not want to have business back there, commercial, then we're not going to shove it down anybody's throat. It's an opportunity. If people want to take advantage of that opportunity, terrific. And we've had property owners here who said, well, I wanted to put something else there. And then they saw some of our roads and said, wait a second, I can make more money doing this, or I can have a better opportunity. And so what we're trying to do is introduce some opportunity here and get the reaction for property owners saying, you just, in some cases, some people have landlocked parcels. It doesn't just have to be residential at 2-acre zones or 3-acre lots. We have some other ideas here in which you can do some larger plans. And one of the things we haven't talked about here are age-restricted communities. We've got congregate care facilities. It's not saying there's no residential in that area. It's all going to be Biddeford Industrial Park. We're looking at a mixture of different things and looking at non-traditional economic development kinds of developments. And let's face it, we've got baby boomers. I know this firsthand, and I'm sure a number of others know that, who are coming at the point where they're going to need a place, they don't want to live in big farmhouses, trust me. And so there's going to be more and more demand for age-restricted communities. Those have very little impact on the community. The ambulance gets the worst part of it because we're going to have to increase ambulance service, and that's about it. But they don't put kids in school. They maintain their properties, and they contribute to the community. You pay their taxes, and you've got basically what I would call a positive fiscal impact. They actually demand less services than they actually pay in taxes for. So let's face it, single-family residential that's geared towards a growing family is a tax loss for a community. If they produce kids, our kids cost that, I'm going to be low on this, let's say $7,000 to $8,000 per child. We're certainly not, if you got 2 children, we're not getting $16,000 in property taxes out of a single-family home. So looking at other kinds of housing or other kinds of community or even congregate care facilities that produce a net positive tax flow or something that would fit in this area as well. And I don't think the planning board has excluded those concepts at this particular time. It's just single-family residential, which is what the area is zoned for right now, isn't necessarily the direction that the comp plan committee or the planning board thought was in the best financial interest of the town, considering all the rest of this green area and yellow area is all residential. This is all residential. These are the only real business areas we've got. And this isn't working out very well. So that's, but getting your input is important. You don't want to play, and the rest of your property owners don't want to play, then we're not going to be successful. We won't sell your land to somebody who wants it.
Is it Pam?
Yeah.
Pam, did your mom have any preference? Did she even realize, or you're gonna have
I
to
don't
home
know,
and,
she
you're gonna have to go home and
noticed
tell
and
her?
mentioned it to me, and I thought I better be here. I don't know what's gonna happen with those properties. I can't say I have preference one way or another at the moment.
Velma?
Yes, Velma Hayes. Have you expanded that DB1 up the Campground Road?
Up the campground road?
Yes.
No, just the Whitman property, just the edge of the Whitman property.
Yes, but,
Do we extend it north?
no, from Route 1, going up the campground road, was that always that zone?
It was going to be that zone, yeah, on
How
an
far-
original plan.
How far was your 1,000 feet?
Well, the original 1,000 feet isn't that far, no, it's,
No.
1,000 feet. It's
So-
1,000 feet, this scale's not very good.
So yes, you're expanding.
Yeah, we expanded a couple hundred feet.
So her property is now in 2 zones.
Sorry?
Her property is now in 2
The
zones.
Whitman property?
Yes.
Yeah, well, her property before was residential 1, and it was BI and BI. Whoa, no, it wasn't. Sorry, that didn't happen. This is a word. Yeah, her property was actually in multitude of zones. She was in community commercial, R1, and mobile home park. So she was in 3 different zones there. The mobile home is an overlay district.
So what happens with a property that's in 2 zones? I mean, she owns a big piece of property right there.
She owns a huge
And
piece.
I come in on the back of it.
That's you.
Yeah, I'm over there. Can't get there from here, so I really didn't have any thoughts of, dividing it into 10 lots and giving each the grandchildren 2 acres, but because they can't get there from here either. But what happens with a lot that big, once you've got her into 2 zones, when she wants to do something with that lot?
Well, what happens is there are just different standards between these two, but they are actually have been designed thus far to be interwoven, to work with each other. They're supposed to be supporting. This is the smaller scale stuff along the road. This is the larger scale behind.
And if someone has a house lot, a double house lot, because I think coming in from Route 1, I don't know, are you in the house lots there, is that a 1 acre zone?
This is a 1 acre zone from here on down. Yeah, that's the line somewhat, the line is just about, it's, Calder's lot right here.
Yep.
This is the line right about like that.
Okay, someone going up the campground road,
Yeah.
what is now the pink,
Yep.
they have a lot there big enough so that they wanted to give half of it to one of their kids, then they should do it now.
Well,
Because if this goes through, then they couldn't take their house lot and divide it and give somebody else another house lot.
In the pink, yeah.
In the pink?
In the DB1, I think that's an accurate statement.
Right, couldn't subdivide it.
They couldn't subdivide it.
not
So-
for residential.
Right.
Now, you can have residential and a business on the same property.
But right now, say they had 4 acres there,
Yep.
and they wanted to take it and give one of their kids 2 acres, and they're gonna leave on the other 2. They can do that right now,
Yes.
but if this passes, they couldn't.
In its present form, yes.
You could also put a road through there to get to the back lot, in the green.
Yeah. Well, that's, if you were to combine these lots, you've got a huge amount of land.
No, but I'm just saying is access to
For
the
all sorts
green,
of things.
to the access to the green.
Right here, Marty.
That's,
This is Campground Road,
I'm
this is
talking about
one.
on the other side.
She's on the other side.
I'm on the other
Oh,
side.
okay.
Up back there.
Yeah. This is the wetland right here, right in the front. I mean, this is kind of moot right in here, because that's all wetland there.
Oh,
anyways.
better believe it.
You don't break up your zone because of wetlands.
That's a nice peat bog up there.
It is a nice peat bog.
Wonderful.
It is. Do you want us to make it a resource protection
No,
district?
thank you. No.
Just asking.
Yeah.
When is your projected time, this year, next year, that this thing's all gonna come into place or not into place? What's the time span on this?
When these guys feel comfortable.
I don't think we can say that. And it was
for Silver
Well, the planning board has been working on this ordinance, this is really part of what the ordinance revision the planning board's been working on, right? So
Yeah, the goal was to bring it to town meeting
Last
this,
year.
well,
Last
last
year.
year. This summer, I don't think we're gonna make it for this summer. There's a small possibility, but there's an awful lot of work to do, and there's an awful lot of input we need to get from people. So I don't think it's even gonna come to town meeting this year.
at the earliest, it could possibly be November. I would say that would probably be a safe guess.
And you are the very few that came here, but the letters went out to 34 different property owners.
That's my concern.
And we're trying to have meetings with them, because this is not the only meeting we're gonna have, we're gonna have subsequent meetings to follow along.
I just feel that, I don't know how you could do it, but you need to talk with each and individual, every landowner, so they fully understand the scope of where you people want to go. You know, sending these papers out, I look at them, if it don't interest me, I file it. You know, more than likely, I got one of these notices. And I know that's a hard thing to do, but you're affecting a lot of property owners there, that this could go into effect, and then they're gonna be outraged.
Give us an idea how we can get them in.
I don't know where they,
Yeah, because if we can't get them in here, we can't go to them.
why can't you?
Do you want all of us in your living room?
No.
But that's exactly why we can't do it.
Hire one person to get in touch with these people by phone or something.
We send out letters, we put ads in the paper, we do public notices, and people don't show up. I'm with John. What else can we do? We can't go knocking on every individual door and say, we're the planning board and we're thinking of doing something that might have an impact. We've sent you a letter. If you choose to throw it in the garbage, that's on you, not us. We're doing everything we can to get people to come here. We've talked with businesses and had them talk with other people in the DB1 and come in and talk with us about what's going on so that we can get some feedback. But if people don't come here, all we can do is hold a public hearing and say, come on down. And it has to be in a public place. We can't go to you one-on-one without violating public access law. We've got to have it in a facility like this.
I fully understand that, but do you have a list of everybody's land?
Yes.
And
And everybody was sent a letter that's in that green zone.
Okay.
Actually, you're not in the green zone, but we could send it to you because you're on the edge of
Maybe
the
you
green zone.
go a little
No.
further and we just make a quick phone call.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, can I also make a comment? You know, now that I've listened to some more public comment, I'm looking at the letter. Is this the actual letter that
Yep,
you
that's the
sent out?
actual letter, yeah.
There's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't look like there's anything on here that actually indicates to that owner that they're impacted by this.
Well, I thought that I didn't say we're taking your land and we're gonna turn it into a garbage dump.
That might get
I know that. I'll say, we're thinking about putting a nuclear power plant in your backyard. What do you think?
I'm not saying it to be, I'm just saying that if, I'm with you, okay? I get cards all the time, I get letters all the time about things that I just look at and I'm like, this doesn't seem to. And then sometimes I find out, oh.
It does say, the second paragraph says, these proposals will essentially rezone some or all of your current parcels from residential to downtown business. I mean, you can't be much more clear than, you know.
I tried to point out, I drove down from Winthrop, and I'm not in this zone, so it was unclear to me what were you even talking about.
Now, of course, if we could get some people who are here to go door to door in their neighborhood and say, come on down, that would be great.
That's fine.
You know, both of these committees would like nothing more than to have a room full of property owners and give their feedback, because as has been stated many times, it doesn't make sense for us, for the town, to propose something that you, the town, doesn't want to happen. So if you want it to happen, great. If you don't want it to happen, great. But we need to know so that we can move in the right direction and everybody can be happy with the decision.
Rather have the discussion here than a town meeting.
And if we can't get them here, could we do it by law? And I know this, I'm saying this is specific, but give them their exact lot. and send them something in writing and say, ask them 5 questions and see if they'll send it back. If we can't get them to come to a meeting.
Simone, how many people responded to our survey? We did,
For the town hall, or?
the one we did last year.
Which one?
For the newsletter?
Yes.
The newsletter?
Which, that was, I'm trying to think, there was an Eastern Trail survey that we
Yeah, we
did.
get about 3%.
We got about 78, 70, it was under.
Not at every.
It was under 100.
It was under 100.
Under
And
100.
Well, for the town hall.
That's
the
typical.
town hall, we
About
probably had about 120 for the town,
Town hall
120
more,
of
that
every
was-
resident that was
You
there.
see that one?
Well, I think Diane makes a good suggestion. I think what I would like to see is a letter that is, lot specific and also
Person specific.
and includes that map,
Yeah.
That was,
X.
I was just gonna say, is there any way I can get
This
my
is-
hands on
Yes, this is your property right here. This is what we are proposing might happen in this area. This is how it might affect you. There's a meeting next week. Would you like to be there? And if you can't, then send us some sort of response in writing, because doing this, I'm gonna back up. The planning board meets endless hours. The comprehensive plan review committee, although we are relatively newly put back together to deal with all of this, we also meet on a regular basis. Everybody's a volunteer. We're all members of this town, and we all try to do the best we can with what we've got, but you can't do it in a vacuum. So we could come up with the best idea in the world, and then take it out to a group of people and have one person come up and say, but you didn't think of this. And then you're sort of back to the drawing board. And that's kind of what we're looking for here. Us doing all of this in a vacuum is an exercise in frustration unless we hear from the people that it's going to affect. So, yes, talk to your neighbors by all means, but I think Diane's suggestion is not a bad one in terms of another letter to these same people with a map that says you are here.
How about following that up with just an informational phone call?
Yeah.
The only thing you do have to be careful of this whole freedom of access thing, that you can't, in a vacuum, I can't be calling you saying, what do you think about this, and then.
That's not what the phone call is about. The phone call to me would say, hey, there's a meeting on potential land use ordinances that could affect your property, we'd like you to show up. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
It's another avenue besides a letter that says, here's your property, because and I'm the same way, I do the same thing, right? Sometimes, I think we have to do diligence to try to get, what we're doing isn't working, right? You look out here, and so we've got to try to take it another step further.
We don't know that yet, maybe no one else is concerned.
That's true, but I mean, it's a good point, but we can't assume.
Look at town meeting.
Yeah.
You're assuming they don't care, I'm assuming they don't. They do care, they think it's fine.
I'm not making any assumption, I'm just thinking, I'm just disappointed that, I just want to make sure that we cover the bases.
Does this plan,
Hold on.
does this plan now make our zoning continuous and all together? In other words, that part that's green, that was something else before, going towards Biddeford, now does that make all of that, does that take that all the way down? Or does
No.
this expand more into another commercial zone?
Stops right there.
Just where the
Stops there.
CCS was.
What's beyond that, going towards Biddeford?
The
The BI district.
VI's unchanged.
Your commercial district.
So part of my land is in,
Part of your land right now, your land right now is in the R1 district. Residential, 1 acre lot. There's your land. Your land right now, Velma, is in the residential one district, and it abuts the business industrial district. Okay? So this right here is where the business industrial district starts. Right now. So we haven't intruded into the business industrial district there. We've actually decreased, in this area, we decreased the amount of land we would be putting in the what is the CCS district, and we're going to be returning some of it to residential. On the other side of it is the business district. We're going to keep the BI district boundaries where they are now, or expand them down. That's something we're going to have to decide. But right now, BI is not moving. We're going to be taking value away from the standpoint of there is value in a commercial property, and then we'll be turning it into residential demolition screen.
I think something too that we need to make, it's, just because you change the zone doesn't mean it's instantly gonna develop. It just puts potential there. So, it's just making it easier, so if somebody wants to sell their land or builds, you have Weir's Motors or something like that, and some other company wants to come in that's very similar, is just putting the potential there, I think, for others, for other landowners to take advantage of that. But you're not making them do anything, you're not, making the change happen, you're just making the potential for them, an opportunity for the landowners, yeah.
But in that E2 district, you could be preventing somebody from doing residential development. Let's say nothing happens for 10 years, and somebody wants to, not for their grandchildren, but they need money for retirement or whatever, and they want to subdivide that. Maybe they've got a 10-acre lot, and it's 2 acre zoning here,
Yeah.
Okay, so they want to sell 5 house lots. What this proposal is right now takes that right away from them.
That's why we wanted those property owners here, to see what their plans are, and because we don't know.
Well, the other thing is, right too, how can they get at these lots?
Right.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, right now, you can't even, the accessibility, unless you're trying to come off Old Post Road, okay? But, I mean, right now, there is no access per se backwards to, I mean,
Yeah.
And we wrestled with that, I will tell you. We wrestled with the houses versus no houses, and I have a funny feeling there will probably be more discussions about houses or no houses.
Also, I'd like to point out that there isn't a restriction against houses. You can have houses, but you also have to have a business on that as well. I mean, that's one potential. The other potential, which the planning board might want to reconsider, would be a mixed-use development in which you have both business and residential in the same development, which would achieve the same goal. The flip side problem with this is, if we don't zone the area for, some of this area for commercial, and try to limit the amount of residential development, when it comes time, when commercial pressure increases, assuming it does, and it's all consumed by residential, then your goal of trying to increase the non-residential tax base or increase the service center capability of this area will be gone. It'll be consumed by residential. And then you've lost a prime location for commercial that you aren't going to be able to get over on Walker's Lane necessarily, or certainly not going to get it over on Thompson Road. This is a for better or worse, this is a high volume traffic corridor, and it consists of a wide variety of users, everything from tourists during the summertime. I mean, our peak time is obviously summertime. It's the major route, north-south route on the East Coast. It's the famous US Route 1 from Calais to East. And it carries a huge amount of traffic, tourism traffic, but it also carries commuter traffic. It also carries commercial traffic. It carries the local traffic. That's, major route, to get, obviously, from sections of the east and west part of the town. It's one of the state's major non-limited access highways. And so it has a great deal of potential for something besides residential. And our neighbors to the north and south have concentrated their businesses along, their business zones along this district to take advantage of, A, its accessibility, B, the amount of commercial traffic that goes through here, and C, the market potential. And so that's something we, at the same time, as a responsible community, have to ask, is the highest and best use always, given what this corridor represents and the amount of traffic added on it, is the highest and best use high density residential, or even low density residential? Or is it to capitalize on the potential to have commercial in a place where you have a market? You don't have to attract it.
I got a question to ask for the public out here. Okay, as you know, we have a business district. We always want input, and usually we don't get any input because of the lack of people showing or not showing. What we have here tonight, does anybody have any suggestions on how to improve what we have now along Route 1? Input.
I just think sewer's the answer. You can do smaller lots, put more buildings. When you look at Kennebunk, they put sewer out south of Kennebunk. Everything on the north end is built. You talk about Kennebunk's gonna let you in the sewer. They had to fight and argue to put in the bank, the new bank, because they ain't got enough sewer line there to take the capacity going into town. So I fully think that if you're looking at that, it's ready to expand our town. We're gonna have our own sewer department, as much as I hate the thought. And all these lots, all the way up, I'll probably be gone hopefully before it gets to me. But you need sewer and water to service this and make it grow.
We have water.
Yeah, finally. Aren't you glad we got water now?
Yeah.
And we got a little pressure now, but we never had it before.
Yeah, I'm not on the water, but, it's a great thing.
What else do you see?
Well, I see that there's a lot of land that's not usable in these zones. You had the thing about the shoreline zoning. Walker Lane is buffered by the river all up through there. How much of that land are you proposing to put in an industrial zone that's not going to make the grade?
I can't tell you how much is non-buildable, but I will tell you that in Arundel, we seem to have no problems building on Naumburgs and Scantic soils. We don't have any shortage of licensed soil evaluators that are giving us septic systems on even hydrant soils. So, the development potential in Arundel is different than development potential in Wyman or someplace that has nice, deep, stratified drift gravel, 60 feet of it. No, we don't have that. We have high water table in Arundel. So does Kennebunk. So does this whole area down here in this bay area. We have basically a clay layer, a maritime clay layer, close to the surface that gives us an impervious surface in which we have a high water table. We even have an ancient saltwater aquifer in section of town right over here. That doesn't, in fact, right in this area right in here, hasn't kept development from occurring. So, do we have the potential to put a very high density development? Probably not. But if we were to have services, yeah, we can engineer things to work. You're not going to build in some of these vernal pools because the state won't let you, but there are lower value wetlands that you could build in.
We'll call them saunas.
If they were thermal, we might have something.
All your plans, you plan to have a road on either side, one parallel, or Route 1?
No, what we would do is we would encourage that, and you would find that anybody who would develop those parcels would put in their own interior road network anyways, because you can't get to it half the parcel without putting in a road. But considering how big these parcels are, they're 50, 60, 70 acres, 50 acres. 50, between 30 and 50 acres. You're gonna have to put in a road. What we're encouraging is that during the planning process, when they're developing this, that they connect their roads, that they make the roads go from one parcel to the next. They work with their neighboring property owners, and they'll get a maximized potential on their property. They keep trying to just do it individually by yourself with your own road in there without making a connection to your property, to your neighbor's property. You're gonna diminish the potential development potential of your land and the value of it as a coordinated development in the future. Most places, Kennebunk's a good example. I mean, you mentioned Kennebunk, the north section of Route 1. You know, when they put that road in behind the post by the post office, what did that do to that area? It opened it up. And those are all different property owners.
Interconnecting.
It interconnected. They fought like heck over it. They did fight. But then after they forced them to put it in, they said, maybe this wasn't such a bad idea. We just put it in, Goodall just put it in a whole new facility, a piece of land that I didn't have access to. And before they made us put in this community.
The town paid for them roads.
Yep.
Property owners did pay for them. Nobody's gonna
Well,
put out $150,000, $200,000 to put a
If you're
road.
gonna, if you're putting in a facility for Southern Maine Medical Center, you're putting in a campus, you're sure as heck are gonna put in a road. It's gonna be driven by the uses that you have, but the larger lots and the more interconnectivity you have on these roads, certainly the potential of what you can attract expands geometrically.
Just because it's zoned like a commercial, it doesn't, I think when we tend to say commercial, sometimes we think big commercial industries, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, the Mayo Clinic is commercial, Seafood Center is commercial, some of these smaller businesses, you have doctor's offices, all of that is considered commercial without being construction type stuff. I mean, even if you take Houston Company on Log Cabin Road, that's a manufacturing, but it doesn't look like it. It's just a very small commercial scale. And I think that's what we're looking at, is those types of small commercial scale businesses in those areas, not industrial park type stuff. I think you're looking for more, smaller businesses that kind of, and by doing like you say, if you had a senior housing, you might get a little grocery store and a restaurant and some facilities, doctor's offices, walking areas for people. So there's a lot of options and a lot of opportunities to develop commercially without having single-family houses. And somebody might have a 10-acre lot, and granted, they might make money selling it off for 5 house lots, but they could also make maybe a lot more money selling it for some type of potential commercial business, like senior housing or something. You probably have more potential that way, if it's zoned correctly.
That's well said. And that's the other point is, we're not trying to take on Bedford, head to head, or even Kennebunk's industrial capabilities. We're not trying to take them. We're not trying to put in industrial buildings. We're not trying to steal Sterling Road from Bedford. That's not our market. We're not trying to be that market. We're trying to be the market that's between that and all the stuff that doesn't go into those parks. What exactly you're talking about, and non-traditional kinds of markets. Kate's Butter is a very non-traditional kind of market. And look where that is. That's in the middle of a rural conservation area. Those are the kinds of things that we're going to be trying to attract. We're looking at trying to capitalize on our rural character, capitalize on our location, our rural character, and trying to get those things that don't want to go to Bedford and may not be able to afford to go to Kennebunk.
but we're still putting them in the dark.
So we have lots of opportunities. We're trying to capitalize on as many of those opportunities as possible, find our niche market. I think the selectmen will be discussing these results of the market study that the Economic Development Committee did. That'll be coming to them soon, I believe, correct, John? Tuesday. So they'll be discussing some of the opportunities that our consultant thought might be out there that we should explore. So that'll be an important thing to take into consideration. Those decisions, those market opportunities also drive zoning. So we may make modifications to our zoning based on those conclusions.
Anyone else have any comments?
I just have one. I have to take off my board hat and put on my property owner hat. I own a house on Campground Road. In this one, it's right in the middle of the R1, and now it is.
That's you.
That's me. I mean, I'd love to be taken out because that's less than an acre lot.
Okay, here you go.
Okay.
Next. No, that was a slip of the hand. I saw that and I went, that's not right. Because it was really supposed to start at the access point to the Hopkins.
Which would be
That's
this.
Yeah, it's that right away that goes through there.
Yeah, which goes over this
Large wetland, yes.
large wetland.
Yeah,
Which makes sense to put a road over it.
Of course, well, it's better than putting a house in.
A bridge.
Or
bridge.
I could put 2 houses back there if I want that one. Have my own private driveway.
Although I understand she's not gonna take pieces. I understand she wants it all. One price. So, yes, thanks for pointing that out, because that was.
I would, if we're throwing out ideas, I would like to see architectural standards. If you're gonna be, you know, like when VIP came in, they had to meet certain, I think if we set certain, start getting some standards, you know, other buildings will follow, other.
You don't want little Quonset huts just thrown up in the middle?
No, I don't.
Well, we're doing the same thing.
We are
for
working
homes.
on that.
I believe they were discussing.
Yeah,
We're the ones.
There's so much blood on the floor on those. Yes, the planning board has actually taken that into account. Because one of the things, when the planning board first started this, that started this ball rolling out of order, was they were trying to implement the 2007 comp plan. And one of the things that the comp plan talked about was the unique character of rural and rural quality. Of course, nobody has defined what that is yet. So that was open to interpretation, but the planning board has interpreted it in its deliberations on certain things. And when they made the negotiations with VIP, which is, I commend them on, because it was nationally done, because they didn't have a leg to stand on to require those standards, but they negotiated with a willing property owner and came up with a building that was not a traditional VIP service center. You know what they look like in Biddeford or in Wyndham or Portland. They are concrete block houses. And that VIP is very different from their standard building.
But a lot of that was driven by the neighbors.
That's true, but the point is that they didn't have to do that. That was a negotiated thing. That's something you guys negotiated.
You lucked out.
You did, well, you lucked out. But the point is you didn't tell the neighbors you can't do anything about it, did you?
And it's what is that standards?
We provided direction.
That's right.
Yeah. We provided direction.
And those weren't terrible standards. And so the planning board worked on trying to create that same kind of character area. And they have some standards that they've proposed that we have to look at. And they're discussing right now standards for the DB2, whether there should be standards. And they've made some progress on that, pretty much almost completed that.
That's, I agree with you on that, but that's another controversial issue. We haven't really heard from the property owners what they
think about that either, so just another,
We haven't heard from business people either.
no. Well, I think we did hear from them when we
A
did.
year and a half ago,
Yeah.
but not since we've started any of this.
Not since we did that, no, but we based it in part on what they said at that meeting, where they said we'd like it to look, like a down, we'd like it to look like a village center, we'd like it to look like a town center. I believe that was what was written down. They said they wanted to have a town center, they wanted it to look like a town center. Of course.
Are there any more questions or comments from the public? No?
Yes, I do have one more comment. In that green area, you're talking about someone being able to put in one residence. Could that one residence be, and I know in a lot of instances, as people are aging and either moving in with their children or their children are adding on an in-law apartment or even a duplex, could that residence be a duplex or an in-law apartment, be a permitted use in that zone?
In-law apartments are allowed in every zone.
Every zone.
Yeah.
How about a
We're not gonna
duplex?
change that.
How about a duplex?
Acreage.
I don't know what we have right now for that.
Have you said multifamily was allowed in?
We did say multifamily.
Let's say residential uses, both single and multifamily, that are part of a mixed-use project will be permitted.
Yeah.
So that still implies that, you have to be selling,
You
something
have
on
to
the
have some kind
side.
of a business along with it.
Yeah.
Farm stand.
There you go. The basic idea is not to fill it up with residential, that's what we go. And maybe we haven't hit it properly, but the idea is to try to reserve the land, those areas for commercial. And still allow residential, but not have it filled up with residential. That's what we're
Still
trying
like to see that option.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Okay, I don't have anything, any of the board members have anything? Certainly want to thank you for attending. I wish we had a much bigger attendance, but we really appreciate you being here and getting your inputs, because we take them to heart.
Please pass the word around.
Yes.
Talk to your neighbors. Entertain a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I made a motion, we adjourn.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, well, I gotta adjourn this meeting, and then